From the complexity of her family lineage to the sheer expanse of her influence, today we look at bizarre things you didn't know about Cleopatra. Number 10. Greek roots. While the legendary life of Cleopatra may have originated in Egypt, the iconic queen wasn't actually Egyptian despite common confusion. Tracing her lineage back to one of Alexander the Great's chief generals, Ptolemy I, the majestic ruler was actually a descendant of Macedonian Greek nobility. Upon Alexander's passing, Ptolemy overtook Egypt and began a dynasty of Greek-speaking pharaohs. However, it's believed that Cleopatra could have very easily had her bloodline diversified across 2 to 3 centuries of Ptolemaic rule, with her mother's identity remaining a mystery lost to time. Despite her lineage, Cleopatra still took great pride in her Egyptian home, being the first in her line to actually learn Egyptian and embrace many of the nation's customs. Number 9. In the family. Many of the royal families of ancient civilizations went to great lengths to ensure the family dynasty continued to thrive. This included marrying and having children with their own family members, a tradition the Ptolemaic family engaged in as well. It's thought that this practice was inspired by the gods Osiris and Isis, 2 sibling deities that set the divine precedent for members of royalty who were considered by their subjects to be living gods themselves. This meant that not only was Cleopatra most likely the direct result of such relations, but she even followed the custom herself, marrying 2 of her younger brothers during her lifetime. First, she married the 10-year-old Ptolemy XIII in a ceremonial union when she herself was just 18 years old, ruling alongside him while maintaining her own romantic relations outside of this marriage. This engagement came about after the sudden passing of their father, leaving the children to rule Egypt together. Later, she would remarry to Ptolemy XIV when he was just 12 or 13, all the while continuing her romance with none other than Julius Caesar on the side. Neither of these marriages lasted for long though, as the hunger for power forced the family to eventually turn on each other. Number 8. Intellect over beauty. Cleopatra is generally praised for her beauty first and foremost, but what's not quite as common knowledge is the fact that she was actually incredibly intelligent. Throughout her reign, the Egyptian ruler used her time to learn as much about the world as possible. Taking an interest in education, she was well learned in subjects ranging from mathematics and astronomy to philosophy and orating. She even learned up to a dozen languages, finding strength as a leader in the ability to communicate directly with foreign rulers and diplomats in their native tongue. Historians have attributed Cleopatra with raising the prestige of scholars in her realm, placing value in their services and taking joy in their company. These details about the legendary queen remain secondary to her supposed allure. However, some evidence argues that she wasn't quite as attractive as often portrayed. Artifacts such as gold coins and statues show Cleopatra as having a large, hooked nose, a strong jawline, and other features not typically tied to beauty. However, this is explained by some historians as a direct decision by Cleopatra herself so as to convey herself as a strong leader. Others, though, state that the attraction of the Egyptian pharaoh was in her way of speaking and intelligence, not so much due to her physical traits. Number 7. Family treachery. For all the good Cleopatra did for Egypt during her reign, the famous female pharaoh wasn't as gracious with her own family. Though she was ceremoniously married to her brother upon being named Pharaoh Queen in 51 BC, she had alternative plans for raising her and Egypt's influence in the world. She seduced the great Roman leader Julius Caesar 3 years later during a trip to the Desert Kingdom, much to the dismay of Ptolemy XIII, her husband-brother. This caused the two to begin fighting for control over Egypt, and with the help of Caesar's forces, Cleopatra bested her brother by way of force. As he attempted to escape the incursion, Ptolemy XIII would drown in the Nile River. Meanwhile, their sister Arsinoe IV had played a role in assisting her brother's stand against Cleopatra and ended up being exiled for her efforts. 6 years later, Cleopatra would order Arsinoe to be slain with the help of a new sweetheart, the Roman general Mark Antony. After Ptolemy XIII's passing, their other brother, Ptolemy XIV, filled his place as both Cleopatra's husband and co-ruler. But just 3 years after his ascent to the throne, Ptolemy XIV passed as well due to poisoning, making room for a third co-pharaoh, Cleopatra's own son, Ptolemy Caesarion Caesar. Number 6. Fondness for theatrics. Seeing herself as the living embodiment of a goddess, Cleopatra took careful steps to control her presentation in hopes of convincing the public of the same. Similar to the modern practice of public relations or even simply representing oneself on social media, she recognized early on that perception was reality to her subjects, and controlling her own narrative amid society was an indispensable tool. Many of her decisions and decrees as a ruler relied on ancient prophecies and religious text for justification, making her proximity to godhood paramount in maintaining control. Using the Egyptian deity Isis as a basis, she would often dress in divine garb reminiscent of the goddess. But when it came to introductions and grand appearances, Cleopatra took her stage effects to the next level. In order to meet with Julius Caesar despite attempts by her brother to obstruct their encounter, Cleopatra had herself wrapped in linens and carpets to be smuggled into the Roman general's private chambers. Once there, she revealed herself in full imperial dress, impressing Caesar and seducing him to become her ally and beau simultaneously. Mark Antony would receive a similar treatment, with her arrival being adorned by a golden barge, equipped with silver oars and large purple sails to make her emergence the very model of sheer majesty. Number 5. Win in Rome. In 46 BC, Cleopatra moved to Rome with her beloved Julius Caesar. Though he held the most prominent position imaginable in ancient Rome, Caesar took little precaution in hiding his affair with his Egyptian mistress. They even brought along Caesarion, their child, and as a result, Roman society became enamored with the illicit relationship. The controversy came to a boil when he went so far as to erect a statue in Cleopatra's honor within the Temple of Venus Genetrix. Her presence in Rome, while bothering some, influenced countless others, with her exotic style catching on with women all across the Republic. Cleopatra's hairstyle, clothing, and pearl jewelry all became hit fashion trends. Her look was so popular, in fact, that many of the works of art depicting native Roman women have been mistaken for portraying Cleopatra herself. Unfortunately for her, the Egyptian queen didn't get to revel in her popularity for long. Following the 44 BC slaying of Caesar by a collection of Roman senators, Cleopatra was forced to flee Rome and return to her home in Egypt. Number 4. Ancient partiers. While a respected general in Rome, Mark Antony thought of himself as being similar to the Greek god of wine, agriculture, and revelry, Dionysus. So when Cleopatra got the chance to make an impression on the powerful foreign diplomat, she played to Antony's ego by dressing as Aphrodite, the Greek goddess of love, and arriving with a company of servants dressed as cherubs. According to Greek mythos, Dionysus and Aphrodite engaged in extramarital relations, an illusion that was not lost on the Roman leader, who immediately fell for his apparent match. The pair were inseparable for the next couple years, enjoying each other's company while utilizing this union to bolster and maintain the autonomy of Egypt in the wake of a post-Caesar Rome. But their time together was anything but business and politics, having formed their own drinking club titled Inimitable Livers. Much of their first year together was spent indulging in the fruits of life. After a late night of drinking, Cleopatra and Antony were said to have taken part in different games, contests, and other frivolities to pass the time, including their favorite activity of roaming the streets of Alexandria in disguise and playing pranks on citizens. Number 3. Naval Command. After Caesar's fall, the power struggle for control of Rome grew intense. Mark Antony's partnership with Cleopatra and Egypt and the 3 children they had together drew the ire of his former ally, Augustus Caesar, the adopted son and heir of Julius Caesar. Augustus used propaganda across Rome to convince the Republic of Antony's supposed betrayal, stating that he looked to give Rome to Egypt and move the capital to Alexandria. Conversely, Antony declared Cleopatra's son, Caesarion, as the true heir to Rome, putting Antony and Augustus's relationship past the point of no return. Antony's unwavering loyalty to Cleopatra caused Augustus to reach a hostile breaking point, and the pair would soon enter their forces into combat with one another, with Augustus citing Cleopatra as the cause. For the next year, skirmishes would build up to the epic final showdown in the naval battle of Actium. The Egyptian pharaoh queen didn't distance herself from this fight, as she would leave dozens of her own ships into battle alongside Antony, but their powers combined were still no match for Augustus's fleet. Number 2. Debatable demise. Driven back to Alexandria as Augustus's soldiers closed in, Cleopatra and Mark Antony are said to have taken their own lives to avoid the punishment and dishonor that would await them otherwise. Antony fatally pierced his own stomach, making his end fairly painful but assured. Cleopatra, though, turned to another method of self-harm that isn't quite as clear. Stories tell of her beckoning a snake, most likely a viper or cobra, to bite her arm, but historians claim no evidence of what actually happened has come to light. She likely passed due to poison, but how it was administered is typically the most debated detail. Cleopatra was known to hide a lethal poison in a hair comb that she kept on her person. Thus, some scholars believe she may have applied the toxin herself via some sort of sharp instrument. While they may have suffered similar fates, Antony and Cleopatra didn't share them together. Word spread to Antony that Cleopatra had already ended her life, and this, coupled with his impending capture by Augustus, led to his fatal choice. Cleopatra buried him in her own tomb before taking her own life, on the eve of being taken captive to Rome. Number 1. Expensive legacy. As an incredibly influential, powerful, and unique female figure from ancient history, it should come as no surprise that Cleopatra's life story has inspired adaptations across all media. From artwork to books, from music to eventually the silver screen. Portrayed in film by 20 different actresses over the last century, if not more, audiences have enjoyed seeing talents like Claudette Colbert, Sophia Loren, and perhaps the most popular Elizabeth Taylor bring the Egyptian pharaoh to life, the latter of which starred in a 1963 edition of the film Cleopatra, a movie that blew others out of the water with the mind-blowing budget of $44 million. When accounting for inflation, that puts the cost equivalent to nearly $369 million, making it one of the most expensive movies to film of all time.